Hello!
Hello!
Welcome to the Yaoi Shelf.
You just missed a gator attack.
He's literally like this big.
He's a lot bigger than that.
No, he's a tiny little man.
Oh my god.
He's a tiny little old man who's doing his best.
I'm so glad I was wearing protection. If you're a listener only, I was just mauled by my cat, and I'm wearing arm warmers.
He was literally just looking for attention. Mm-hmm. Hello. Welcome to the Yaoi Shelf. Grab a seat and relax. If you are watching this in video version, you may notice I look like how I did in high school.
Very edgy.
So goth.
I do not. I did not look this cool in high school.
I'm not saying I look good right now.
I think you do.
Thank you.
I'd look a lot cooler if I wasn't wearing this old lady shawl, but it's fucking freezing.
Yeah.
But I have bats on my face.
You have bats on your face. Yeah, just doing my best Rhea Ripley, just goth dom mommy vibes. But we're here to talk about something that, as we've mentioned a few times on the show, came up out of recording another episode. And, we sit and we think about it because typically after we record, there's always usually like an autopsy of like, hey, what did we do? What?
No, it's just autopsy is the perfect word.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, there's always an autopsy at the end where it's like, hey, what did we not cover? Usually that's to prep for the live. What did we go into way too hard? That's to make us feel bad because we both have anxiety. That's just self-flagellation to make us feel bad. And then there's the, hey, this could be a really good episode topic.
Mm.
And we had that recently talking about the performative angst of early BL fandom. Because there's really not a better word for it. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon that happened particularly in Western fandom spaces, fed by Eastern fandom spaces. Because I don't want to exclude anyone from this, but it was very much perpetuated in the early 2000s of just doing the hashtag fucking most. And the repercussions of that are still felt in fans to this day.
Yeah.
Carola's not ready for therapy today.
I'm already dissociating. It's fine.
So we're going to be talking about that. I'm excited to talk about it because I feel like this is one of those mini things that I have a lot of feelings on and haven't had a space to talk about it.
Mm.
So I'm hoping to provide a platform, free therapy, for everyone else who might be in a similar position. Because I feel like the minute Carola and I started talking about it, it's like, why the fuck did we do this? Why were we like this?
Did you find an answer?
Kind of.
Okay.
Softly. I softly found an answer. It's not good, but I found one. It's not going to make you feel better.
Oh, great. Okay.
But it's there. So thank you so much for listening. Carola, this episode is going to be what?
Extremely demonetized?
Correct. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/theyaoi-shelf. Again, that is patreon.com/theyaoi-shelf. That helps us pay for fancy things like me needing a new fucking lamp.
Help Amanda get a new lamp.
Carola needs shoes. I need a lamp. We're the worst D&D party.
Oh my god.
We're the saddest TTRPG party that's ever existed. Anyways. So this month we're going to talk about the performative angst of early BL fandoms, and this is where we put a trigger warning.
For everything, I think.
Literally for fucking everything.
Just like a big umbrella.
Yeah.
Warning, content warning.
because we're going to end up talking about series that were probably scarring to us. We're going to end up talking about subjects that we probably shouldn't have broached when we were broaching them. So big trigger warning, just for everything. If this is your road trip episode,
don't.
I'd love to hear it.
If this is your road trip episode, may I suggest a different episode?
No.
Okay. I just don't want anyone to like drive off the road or something. I don't know. What if we unlock some repressed teenage memory of some horrible BL hentai that someone discovered and then they drive off the road? Like, do you want to have that on your conscience? Conscience?
No, I don't. So please don't drive off the road.
No.
But also, absolutely listen to this while you're driving.
Also, we take no responsibility. We've given our trigger warnings.
Yeah, there
are going to be some subjects in here.
Yeah, this is not the episode to have on while your parents are in the car.
Why would anyone listen to us with their parents in the car?
Maybe they have chill parents, Carola. I don't know.
I have chill parents. I don't want them to listen to us.
Why are you hiding me?
I'm not hiding you. I'm hiding me.
I'm hiding my true self.
I mean, they know what I'm like, but like, Jesus Christ, they don't have to see me in action.
So there's our blanket trigger warning. We very rarely give those, and we're actually going to talk about how this performative angst likely shaped some of our feelings on trigger warnings. Carola, what?
It's just a cat. It's fine.
The brief look of utter disgust had me concerned.
No, I live in fear, but
he's literally not doing anything.
You can't see him. You don't know what he's doing.
I can hear him thumping around.
He has a very threatening aura.
Oh my God, he's a cat. So, early fandom in general was a weird place, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Gatekeeping was everywhere. People were flat out racist. I mean, they're still flat out racist, but it was worse.
Yeah.
Somehow it was worse. And there was this particular habit, particularly in, I subsected out as like hentai spaces because, at least like for me, my experience in the early 2000s is that there were some anime and manga that normies watched. So like your Naruto's, your Dragon Ball Z's, and like they were just like normies who happened to watch an anime. And then there were the weebs. And the weebs were the one, I mean, that's where I was and still am. You know, the weebs were the one.
Yes.
Were the ones that like took it too seriously. They were the ones, you know, doing the shipping manifestos and the everything like that. But because we all had this common theme of anime and manga, your shonen, shoujo, BL, and yuri weebs had to interact a lot with the hentai bro. And the hentai bro is a figure that's almost mythological, like the Hat Man. But when I say it, I guarantee you every American fan just like perked up, like a meerkat. Because we all knew that one hentai bro. He was usually wearing a trench coat. I promise he threatened to blow up the school. They all did.
You know,
yes.
It's so fascinating to me because I can relate to so much of this, but so much of it is so different.
Yes.
And like, I think because obviously our culture was very different. And again, we talked about this at length, especially in the BL con scene episode, that we didn't have communities yet. So like, I was among like the pioneering generation who were like, so I think in a lot of untrained eyes, so in the normie eyes, I was the hentai bro.
Well, and exactly, to normie eyes, we all looked the same.
Yeah.
So, like, when I was in high school, I was president of my school's anime club, because of course I was.
Yeah, and because you had one of those. We didn't. Of course, we don't have any clubs, so...
Carola, I was going to say, Carola, I would absolutely be president of your school's anime club. And I would
I
run it.
don't doubt it. Not least because over here, I think one of the reasons we have nothing is because nobody ever wants to volunteer for anything.
So what you need is an American.
Yeah. Literally.
What I'm hearing what you need is an American. But I was president of my high school's anime club, and I was on student council. So, you know, all the student organizations get together and meet. And it's like a giant Hatalia episode. So I was there with one of the football players who was like representing the high school team. And he's like, hey, you're in that anime club. Like, I am the anime club. But okay, sure. He's like, can you give me some of that Asian porno? It's like,
I know that is exactly how he said it too.
Just a Texas white high school football player. Can you get me some of that Asian porno? And like, I looked at him because it's like, well, yes, of course I can. You know, opens up trench coat. You know, yeah. Like, of course I can. But also, like,
what do you want? You know?
Yeah, like, you know, opens coat lined with, you know,
which
like,
one? Like, you.
So it was so funny because it's like, well, yeah, I can. But also, like, very much the we demand to be taken seriously kind of thing. It's like, that's not all anime and manga is. We're here to represent cross-cultural communication, blah, 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 blah. I literally had a sibling incest yaoi in my bag while I was defending the necessity of an anime club.
Well, you can have both. And it's like...
And I had to lie to my high school principal because he asked about it. And I was like, they're just good friends.
They were cousins.
I think they actually were kind of cousins. It wasn't, they were cousins. But they still fucked each other. And I had to lie to my high school principal and be like, no, they're just close. Don't worry about it.
It's fine.
No, you can't read it. but
now I need my inhaler. But
being looped into that hentai space exposed a lot of fans to things that they were not aware of. I've said multiple times on this show how many times when I was like 14, the hardest thing I'd ever watched was Inuyasha. And like having one of my trenchcoat mafia friends open up his hentai Bible, a literal 4-inch ring binder full to the brim of printed out material. Because we just print and porn out in the library.
Yeah.
As you do.
As you do. You know what printer ink costs?
I'm also trying to imagine, like, printing this at home. Because, you know, the printer, especially in the 2000s, the printer is usually next to the computer, which is in an open space.
In the family room. In
the family room. So if I leave that printer for anything...
and you will... Because it took about half a year to print an image.
It took a calendar day to print an image. So, heaven forbid I have to go to the bathroom or get water or anything. That is the exact moment my aunt is going to need to print something. And she's going to look and she's going to uncover my weird Sasunaru. And I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I'm sorry, but you know.
But we ended up being in a lot of hentai spaces because I think it's important to mention that despite Carola and I's dislike of fluff.
I don't dislike fluff.
I dislike fluff.
You dislike fluff. I like a good mixed bowl. You know? I like it all.
I say I dislike fluff, and I'm literally writing a canon Divergent Matt and Mellofic where they end up going on a nice honeymoon together.
Yeah, exactly. You like fluff, but you're in denial. Like you're very picky about your fluff. But
I am.
You'll indulge now and again.
I will.
I mean, I enjoy it, but I prefer it if it has I do prefer a little extra sting, a little pain straight to the soul, but like I can enjoy a good fluff.
But like, I remember being super vanilla when I started my anime journey. And then just like, to doing a callback to our live, like the symbiote being corrupted and turned into a black goo monster.
Yeah. I can't. And the thing is, like, I think, I mean, we're still only at the intro, but it's just because I keep comparing. But like, yeah, but I keep comparing because my experience is so different to yours in the sense that, this didn't happen in school. I was the one infecting other people. I was a symbiote in my school. But it's more that, because everything that happened to me happened online. Because we had no in-person communities really.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I mean, I had a point. I just started. My brain just died. But no, what the hell?
So because of our tangentiality to that, like, particularly hardcore hentai space, a lot of fans got exposed to some Carola's dying
Again.
that were pretty hardcore, and it was typically against your will. I think what was interesting to me, and it's interesting to hear our experiences being similar but different, but like how much of mine was in person.
Yeah.
Especially early on. Like, did it eventually go online? Of course it did. But a lot of my experiences at first were like being a freshman in high school, just trying to make friends and getting asked the question, oh, so you like anime? It's like, yeah! And then some dude, apropos of nothing, shows me some blown out asshole.
Yeah, no, exactly. That was not my experience. But my experience was more, oh, you're just hanging out on some GeoCities fan page, and then you click the wrong link, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that exists.
I did get there. I think that was more like 15, 16 for me, where it was like I opened up this link. I mean, the famous Ed and Al fic that I talk about all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I think most of this for me happened when I was more, around 15, 16. Because again, I didn't have internet at home. and everything, but I was exposed to things like I was definitely exposed to hentai earlier. Like my first experience with hentai was I was 11. That was one of those links I clicked because I mean we did have hentai at home. We had internet at home, but it was dial up and I wasn't allowed. We had hentai at home. Listen,
you're coming to the shop. We have hentai at home.
The hentai at home. No, so I definitely experienced it, but I think my first experience, like, and my first and like most memorable in-person experience, like it's one of those. I think I told the story before. It was an accident. We were hanging out at then boyfriend's house. We were celebrating his birthday, and you know how it is because we were into this weird Asian stuff that no one understood. So people, like family, would just be like, "Oh, this looks Japanese," and then they'd buy it for you.
Right.
And so he'd gotten a VHS tape of the Ninja. It was either Ninja Scroll or Ninja Resurrection that he got on a VHS tape because whoever bought it for him knew nothing, and it was like, it says manga, let's just buy it. So we're watching it, and one thing is all the blood, but then all of a sudden there's this extremely graphic rape scene, and we're just like the entire birthday party, 14-year-olds just sitting there like, oh, okay. And that was an experience. That was a bonding experience for the gang.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk about that social aspect in a second. Oh.
But this is as close as I came to the hentai Bible dude, because all of my in-person experiences until I became the hentai Bible dude were accidents.
Nope. I especially like I think about who I was when I was in high school. I didn't really get goth outwardly until like 17 years old, even though I was always goth in my heart.
Of course.
I never really looked the part. So I'm wearing like old Navy 2004 nauticals. Like just I look like I'm perpetually leaving a very poor yacht party. I am the spot of pink surrounded by black trench coats.
Oh.
And they protected me. Like it was the best time of my life. Like I loved it. But
Were
you know,
these trench coats in your Catholic school, or was this?
no.
No. Okay. Yeah. Just
I was
checking.
in public school by then.
Yeah. Okay.
Go figure. I leave Catholic school and I immediately go find the trench coat mafia.
Oh my
I
god.
left Catholicism and immediately ran into the arms of a goth guy in a trench coat and trip pants.
But I mean, somehow it all comes full circle because there is a lot of Catholic imagery in a lot of hentai. So like, there's there's a circle there. Like,
I didn't mean for that noise to come out as so judgmental. That was not intentional. Just. But it became this interesting thing that, especially in meat space, human space, and then continuing online, that this need to prove yourself as a fan. You know, we talk about gatekeeping a lot, but I think we talk about gatekeeping in very abstract terms because, at least like for me, there's still just a smidgen of trauma related to it. Of being told like, hey, you're not a real fan over and over and over again. I was in a comic book store with my friend Carlos, and like in my 30s, like I'm an adult in a comic book store. He's looking at Jim and the holograms. I'm looking for Etrigan the demon. Like we are not the same. But this like kid walks up to me and is like, oh, you're looking at comics? It's like, yes. Like, I'm an adult and I pay taxes. Yes. It's like, name all the Robins. And it's like, this isn't Legends of the Hidden fucking Temple. I don't owe you an answer. Leave me alone. And like, I gave him an answer. I missed one. I missed the dumb girl one because no one remembers the dumb girl one. But I literally named all the Robins in order. He's like, oh, you missed one. And it's just like, why are you engaging with me? I just want my stupid demon who speaks in rhyme.
oh god.
You know, Carlos over there just going looking at Jim and the holograms. Like, doesn't get bothered at all because he's a man.
Must be nice.
I have to prove myself every time I touch a comic book that I actually know what I'm doing.
And to a child, no less.
You know, so there was this need for this like dick measuring contest because these communities, our communities, you know, and this is, I think we talked about this during the pro ship, anti ship episode and the purity culture episode. Our communities were so under attack from all angles at this point. Everything we did was aberrant. Everything we did was a deviation. Everything we did was weird and immoral and gross and disgusting. You know, literally grew up in a Catholic household where this was not okay. And then this happened. Gestures. And then
yeah, look how that turned out. Is this what you wanted? Like,
sends a picture to my aunts. This is what you wanted. You know, we had so many attacks on all sides that we were very insular. The gatekeeping, though it became a tool for misogyny and racism and sexism and homophobia, was originally just, I need to see if you're on my level. We cannot allow normies to get in. Normies were seen like this Trojan horse. If we let normies in, they ruin everything. And I've been proven correct, look at My Hero Academia. If we let the normies in, and they made anime boring.
I don't think that's... I mean, I don't think it made anime boring, but I think that it made fandom a lot worse. I think that
Yeah, we let the normies in, and now we have to talk about fictional characters having rights.
and you like understand what I'm saying. Of course I want my stupid blorbos to have rights within the universe they live in. I don't want them to have rights in the real world.
You can't objectify fictional character. They're literally objects.
They are literally objects.
They're literally objects.
But like, I mean, it's fair if you're like looking at a character, like so many of our favorite characters have a traumatic past, have a terrible home life, and it's like, yeah, I wish that your parents didn't suck and that someone actually took care of you when you were a child. Like that's the kind of right.
They needed the trauma to be hot.
Yeah, that too. I mean, like, I wish they didn't have to go through that, but then there would be no story.
Carola, what is Yuki Eri-san's trauma?
An empty husk. I mean, he already is an empty husk, but, you know, of a different...
variety.
Yeah, first of all, he isn't Yuki 80.
Yeah, he's Eddie Uzuki.
Yeah, he's Uzuki 80, so he's not even...
So he doesn't even take on the name.
Oh, you know what he is? That he's a monk. Because that's what he was supposed to be.
Yeah, so there's literally no gravitation. We should be thanking Kitazawa.
This is not the way I want this discussion to go.
What I'm hearing is that we need to all say thank you to Yuki Kitazawa.
No.
Because without him... Wait, no!
That is not what I'm saying.
That is the message that I'm endorsing.
Oh my god.
And Carola is scrambling because she knows I'm right. I
mean, there are still plenty of things that could have fucked him up, you know? He
not
is
like Kitazawa-sensei.
Well, there's always Toma.
I don't know why I was so gleeful with that. Please leave me alone.
Yeah. Get back to your dick measuring contest. You were saying.
I will. You know, there was a necessity to prove yourself. And it started off with the best of intentions. It started off with a genuine desire to keep these spaces. Like, saying pure feels wrong because there was nothing pure about what we were doing.
No, but like, pure-blooded. Even worse.
That sounds, yeah.
That's actually terrible.
That's worse.
But like, keeping them to ourselves.
Yes.
Keeping it within the family.
You've made it incest now, and it's worse. You've made it Aryan incest, and it's worse now.
Okay, take away the Aryan aspect, but the incest, that was absolutely intended from my part.
I mean...
Oh, can't wait for someone to take that out of context.
The incest was intentional. New sticker coming to the shop.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
But that gatekeeping quickly turned into a tool that was wielded incorrectly.
Oh, yeah.
Very quickly. And, like, I think you guys have heard Carola and I talk enough about, like, our mixed feelings about that gatekeeping nowadays. Because now, honestly, I kind of miss it. I
still gatekeep a lot of my most important interests because I just don't want to deal with other fans.
Valid.
And every single time I accidentally fall into, for instance, Visual K Twitter, I am reminded of why I like to enjoy my hobbies alone and why I want to fangirl about my musicians alone. Because what the fuck is happening out there? I hate it. And like, this isn't, like, this is also me back in 2005. Like, literally the same thing.
Right. And I'm kind of the opposite. If anything, to me, turning insular with fandom almost feels wrong. I was always very social about being a fan. I was always very social about it. I was usually stealth. A friend of mine were talking about, especially, like, being stealth, being a black weeb. Like, we never got to do the whole, like, wearing Naruto headbands out in public and stuff. You know, like, we didn't get to be super ostentatious like that. I totally did, though. I snuck it in my bag and I wore it when my aunt wasn't looking. But, you know. Good! You know, but, like, typically we didn't get to do that. And, like, having to have these little, like, subtle signifiers of being a weeb. So like one of my favorites is the pocket watch from Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was such a subtle weeb tell that it was like, you start seeing a bunch of kids with fucking watch chains. It's like, okay, unless all of you are old timey time travelers, gaggle of weebs right there. It's like, unless all of you have a train to catch, you know. It's a
yeah,
gaggle of kind.
the train to Traumaville.
Which is where we're all going.
Oh yeah.
But there was this need to show that we belonged in this space, that we weren't normies, that we could take it.
Yeah.
That is intentional. Now, after this intro, you may be asking yourself some questions, dear listener.
After this 32-minute intro.
You might be asking some questions, dear listener. I understand. Carola, why were we doing this?
You know, I am also asking this question, and I think some part of it is we didn't know any better. We were kids. Our brains weren't developed. But we also felt like we had a lot to prove.
Okay, I'm back with you now.
Yeah.
I'm back with you. For a second there.
We were dumb. But
Look. So, if you're listener only, I just gave Carola increasingly judgmental stares. Because one thing that I was always very aware of, and I think surprises me the most, is how much age played a role in this. And while in theory we could absolutely and probably should redo our minors and adult spaces episode, a lot of the frankly cis men that I knew that were showing me this material were older than me, and sometimes significantly so. So it wasn't just me and my dumb friends who are all 14 looking at some weird disembowelment porn. It was someone who was 17, sometimes 18 years old, showing someone who was 14. And that has a very different mouthfeel.
Yeah, I guess.
You guess?
I guess.
Because it's one thing when it was me and my dumb friends and we were all like 16, 17 years old. It's another thing when you have like this guy that you met online in his fucking 20s.
Yeah.
And he's 8 years older than you. And he's like, hey, I hear you like anime. Slides you a link to something. But I agree with the point of we were trying to prove something.
Yeah. And like all teenagers, and especially, I mean, you see a lot of discussion these days, a lot of video essays, a lot of TikToks, a lot of content about how the awkward phase is gone. Like your childhood is over almost before it begins, and you're immediately into spaces that are too grown for you. But if there's one thing that especially young teenagers have faced, at all times, it's the whole, we have always thought we were more mature, more capable, more clever than we are. Like we are immortal, like nothing can hurt us, like it's fine, we can do the thing. Like obviously we were nerds. We were, we weren't like the kids. If you look at a lot of the points of reference that we had, at least that I had, because like we didn't, again, we were a little slow on the uptake, so we didn't have anything. But when I was, in my tween era, which, wasn't a word back then, tween wasn't a word we used, but, you were like 12 and then going into your teens. So many of your references were like watching sitcoms or watching, TV shows that were about kids that were slightly older than you, and like trying to push borders and, like
Yeah.
trying to get into concerts that they were too young to go to, or, smoking behind school or whatever. And I never wanted to do any of those things because that wasn't, because I just wanted to be in my room, reading. But it's kind of the same thing where,
Yeah.
like those kids who are like, oh, it's just a party, it's fine, I can take care of
Mhm.
myself. We were like, oh, but it's fine, I can handle it.
Right. I think I think it's both proving yourself within that fandom space because of how important that currency was.
Mm,
Like, it sounds really trivial now to think about how important that like clout was, but it was everything in early fandom spaces. If you
mm,
didn't have it, if you didn't have the social pedigree to be in these spaces, you were not allowed to do anything.
mm.
Everything was a test, everything was a quiz, and you were constantly having to jump over hoops to prove, just fucking tap dancing to show that you belonged in this space so you could all talk about Naruto.
Again, I think I am actually incredibly grateful that I kind of got to be a part of like the prototype weeb generation in my country, because I had friends, and I mean, they weren't friends at that point, they were acquaintances, because
Okay, fair.
no, because I went from being, do you know what it felt like when we kind of reached the milestone that we
Mm-hmm.
had hung out so much at the comic book store
Mm-hmm.
that the people who worked there, they knew us by name, they knew what
Yes.
we liked, and then
Yes.
once we were invited to come and hang out at someone's house, and they were
Mm-hmm.
older than us, like there was this guy, he's actually married to my friend now, but he was in his 20s, and we started
Mm-hmm.
hanging out when we were like maybe 17, so like the age gap wasn't massive.
No, that's not bad.
But it's like when you are living at home and you don't have any money, and you get to hang out with the guy who works at the comic book store, who lives by himself, and his house looks
It's
the
the
way my
coolest
house
thing.
looks now. you know it's like, it was the coolest thing. And that was like, so we did have people around us who we kind of looked up to fandom
Mm-hmm.
wise, but we didn't have that culture. At least I didn't. I can't speak to others. I can't speak to other parts of, the community, or like other parts of the country. But the way things were here, it was so small. The community was so small. So there was very little space for us to feel like we had to prove ourselves in person. But on the internet, whole other deal.
Right. And I'll
And then
also,
within your in group
yeah,
eventually.
and I'll also slot in here, a lot of this experience from me is probably, it is because I'm black and female presenting.
Oh yeah.
I guarantee you, if I was a skinny white guy, I would own Viz at this point. Like,
Mhm.
I would be the god of the anime. But because I'm black, and for whatever reason, up until fairly recently, being black and an anime fan was considered non-congruent. You could not be those things, even though most of the black people I know are all weebs. Shocking. Um, but it was needing to prove yourself, and then also, I know at least for me, it was definitely a lot of like that teenage rebellion of like, oh, you think I can't handle this? I'm gonna find something worse. So, and I did a lot.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you know, I've made this joke multiple times, but it was true. My aunt was like, "Oh, gravitation is far too explicit," and it's like, "Oh, I can do you one better."
Hmm.
Just like immediately dives into the internet, doesn't come back out.
You're still in there.
When they're, it's like the Matrix, I'm still in there. Um, but that needing to prove yourself to your friends, to the community, and then an interesting aspect, to yourself.
Oh yeah. I am my own worst enemy.
Yep. Yep. And
Yeah.
looking back, I realized that a lot of that dick measuring contest, while I did have it from outgroup in, a lot of it was also myself.
Oh yeah.
A lot of that dick measuring contest was me x me.
Yeah. And it's like I still to a certain extent do this. Again, I am extremely gatekeepy on like specific things.
Mm-hmm.
And then and I will be like, I will not talk about this thing
Mm-hmm.
unless someone else brings it up. And then I immediately need to prove to them, but
Yes.
mostly to myself, that
Yes.
listen, I may not talk about this a lot, but I need you to know.
You have to exert that
Yeah,
dominance.
like I have to, exactly. It's about dominance and it's about winning.
It is.
And it's
It's
so stupid, but this is important to me for some weird ass reason that is probably rooted in
in
things.
deep insecurity. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
there's yeah, for me it's because I'm 5'1", but I'm the same way. Like I'm immediately I need to show you my dick is bigger.
Yeah,
I
and it's
need
kind of,
to do it.
and it's like we've talked about this before and like in other contexts or in other episodes about
Mhm.
how part of the reason why we get like this is because we had to fight so hard to be allowed to be ourselves and to
Correct.
be unapologetically fans of things that I'll be damned if someone's going to come in here and think that they know more than me or try to somehow like win against me at my own game. Like,
Right,
excuse me,
exactly.
I did not have to go through bullying for you to come here and
Exactly.
claim that you know more about this thing than I do, even though they maybe didn't, and maybe I just interpreted it that way because.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that we both have that, both being panelists, and
Mm,
panelists especially have to deal with younger audience members. Like
yeah.
I know that has made me very defensive. I infected my birding server with Hotiful Boyfriend. They all know about my weird crush on the partridge. Uh,
I mean, I was gonna say it's not like you hide that crush very, very well. You kind of flaunt it a little.
he's perfect, and I love him.
But I also want you to know that every day, maybe not every day, but every time I play New Carnival and Father the Boreal Owl appears, I think of you.
But I was talking about Hotiful and my birding server because I said I want to hold a chucker. I want to hold that fucking bird. I just want to cradle it in my arms like a chicken. Um, that when they're doing a display of dominance, like when males are doing a dominance display, they'll
Mm,
tilt up their heads and they'll do this thing called waltzing. So they're just like head up, just like bobbing around.
yeah.
And like that's what we do in fandom
Oh
spaces.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And like in hindsight, it looks Sisyphean and stupid. This is a bird the size of an American football just bobbing around with its neck up. Like that makes it easier to shoot. Like it's stupid. But in that bird's mind, it's I'm the biggest bird. I'm the biggest
Yeah,
bird.
yeah.
What
Which
you're
is
doing.
exactly what we're doing. And
Exactly what we're doing.
it's like I don't even like I mean we've literally just kind of delved into how this happens inside of our heads, but
Yes.
even still, like I'll when we talk about it, I still end up coming back to why am I like this? Why can't I just and then of course it's also something that particularly you like to repeat a lot is that there was no such thing as casual fandom.
Not a single
So,
ounce of it. There was
right?
no dipping in and out of series. There was no, oh, I only watch the big three. And again, it's that having to prove to others and to yourself. So, like, I've talked about my existential crisis with anime recently. That is
Oh
like, do
yeah.
I even still like anime? What am I? What is my life's purpose now? And
Hmm.
it's because I don't really watch a lot of newer stuff. And it's like, yes, you do still like anime and manga. Your eyes light up when Cowboy Bebop is on. You clearly still love anime and manga. It's that you just don't relate to the newer stuff because you're not 12 anymore.
Mm.
But to also focus this back on BL, because I, when we talk about anime and manga fandom, please know that we're almost always still talking about BL fandom because those fandom experiences were not disjointed.
No.
Because I feel like there's someone who's going to be like, you guys aren't talking about BL very much because those two experiences weren't separate yet.
No, and again, like we talk, I actually thought about this earlier today when I was out for a very short walk that I mean, yeah, we're a BL podcast, but we it's a BL podcast that also talks about, you know, we talk about BL history, we talk about fandom history, and those are very intertwined. And like we've said so many times on this show, like the 90s and the early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of BL. So a lot of the BL content is actually fan content that we created and consumed amongst ourselves. So and absolutely. Fan content absolutely counts as BL. And if you want to talk about yaoi, if you want to talk again about the definition of yaoi, then the textbook definition of yaoi, once again, is not actually sexually explicit BL. It is literally aniparo doujinshi. It is fan-made content, fan-made comics, which very often were gay and explicit in content. And therefore, exactly what we're talking about. So, like, when we're talking, and like when we talk about things like, I mean, yeah, sure, it's not actually labeled as such, but don't you tell me that Naruto isn't a BL, right? And like, don't tell me that Bokuaka isn't gay. Because shonen and sports anime always have that, it's not even a subtext, but even then, we will be doing the episode on this, but like, you know, the Fujin economy and sports anime is a circle. Fujin are keeping
literally an Ouroboros.
It's like Fujin are keeping sports anime and shonen alive, and so when we talk about for instance Bokuaka, we are literally talking about ships.
Yeah, we're not talking about like main plot. We're talking about which fictional characters we want each other to blow their backs out with.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's like when I mention all these like shonen series, like that's why I felt like I needed to caveat there is that yes, this is about early BL fandom, but that was so inextricably linked. There was not at this time separation between the two.
No, and it's like if you summarize, like if I summarize my early fandom experience in the early 2000s, then remember, BL manga did not exist here. Like, okay, Tokyo Pop had a couple of titles. So Tokyo Pop had published Gravitation and Fake Banana Fish, which, you know, was already out of print.
Yes.
Airy Query.
Woo!
And I think there was one more. But, like, those were kind of like the big mainstream companies that published manga had published a couple of BLs that were just like part of their catalog, but we didn't have like June wasn't in existence.
Yeah, June didn't exist.
Tokyo Pop hadn't. I mean, June existed in Japan, but June as we know it, digital manga, did not exist. Right. Tokyo Pop had not launched Blue yet. We didn't have, so the BL that we had was literally the very, very few manga that you could get at the comic book store, which were incredibly hard to get because they would have like 2 volumes and then you'd never get the rest. And so we would have the very few OVAs we could find on the internet, and that is literally Ai no Kusabi, Boku no Sexual Harassment, Close the Last Door, Level C, Papa to Kiss in the Dark, and then finally, and then of course we did get Gravitation, we did get the Tsukisho anime, and then finally the wonder and amazement that was the actual pretty consenting voice of sensitive pornograph, but that was later on. Like, there wasn't a lot of BL to choose from, and I can assure you that no one was writing fanfic on Boku no Sexual Harassment. I hope.
It's always so funny because like we talk about this on the show a lot. Like when you trigger an old fan. Like the thing that launches them back into like fan war flashbacks.
That is literally what just happened. Like, and it's just, and I started watching, I remember, this is, if you are a listener who
Yes.
who are young, who wasn't there. You need to understand that both Amanda and I remember when Oran came out.
Okay,
We
fuck off.
no, I
Fuck
need to
off.
no, but I just want to make a point because Oran High School Host Club is now such a staple of shoujo, right? That
Yes.
to a lot of people it feels like it has always existed. Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of kids in fandom today have grown up with the kiss kiss fall in love meme. You
Yes.
know? And I remember when this show came out and
Yes.
I was introduced to it by my friend who was on exchange at the time, and
Mhm.
she wrote me and she was like, "Oh, have you been watching this?" And I'm like, "No, should I?" And she's like, "Two words. The Hitachin twins." Actually, that's three words. But I was like, I
The
got into
article
it.
is understood.
And I got into it because
Right.
of the twins fan service because we didn't have BL. So you just kind of, you
You
just,
pulled way out of whatever you could.
yeah.
Well, and I think that's what's so interesting about it is, again, like one, that those fandom experiences were linked, and two, again, that cross pollination with that hentai space.
Hmm.
So, like, within our weeb group, there were tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was Prince Weeb when I was in high school because I ran the anime club. I was the Tamaki of weebs, or on Tamaki, not your weird tentacle boy.
Leave my weird icy tentacle boy alone. He's perfect. But I know that you weren't him because he didn't exist yet.
Well, one, he didn't exist yet, and two, I project entirely too much confidence to be that.
He couldn't be the president of anything.
No, he couldn't run an introverts only club.
I love him so much.
So like so like within our, like, you know, if it's like Dante's Inferno on our like weeb levels, I was Lucifer down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And you know, there were the hentai bros that were maybe like on level 3. There were the Fujoshis who are maybe at like level 2, right next to me, where they belong. And then, you know, there were the normies that like watched Dragon Ball Z. They were like top level in purgatory. So like we had always interacted in that space. Like, again, there was not a separation of being a fan of anime and manga wider and being a BL fan. And even now, like, of course, am I a huge BL fan? Yes, I am. But look at the works I make things for. I'm not necessarily writing fic of pre-existing boys' love. I'm making other things gayer.
Yeah. But and I also do that. I mean, I create original BL, but and then I write my own fanfic based on my own characters.
I just had my wig snatched, and I hate that. I write original BL.
No, but like
I'm a published author.
That's not what I meant.
I know.
So, like I write, but if you look away from my my increasingly spiraling deep hellscape that is Kin Porsche that I can't talk to you about because you know you just said that if I mention another fic to you, then you would get violent with your links.
I would, and I will.
But yeah, but apart from Kin Porsche, I have never interacted with fandom content of actual BLs.
Mhm.
I guess Banana Fish.
That's
But
like
again,
fanfic.
Banana Fish is shoujo, but it's BL, but it's shoujo. But
If that's
also,
Sojo, I have 2 living parents.
but also, it is also a work that, you know, needs some major fix it, and so it is okay, you know, that it is a very natural thing, I think, to go out and seek out fan works for Banana Fish because it's free therapy. Anyway, I personally usually feel, even though a lot of BL content isn't necessarily satisfying because, you know, it ends too quickly or, you know, it didn't deal with things in the way that maybe you wanted. But I generally tend to be like, the couple gets together, that's fine. The end. I know they're fine. I got to see the sex because it's in the manga. It's not in the anime because, you know, they had to censor it. They did a whole fade to black thing or that weird thing they did in love stage.
Where they throw like a gossamer sheet over the
That
camera.
was such a weird fucking thing. But yeah, so like you already kind of get what you came for. So
Yes.
naturally, I'm not gonna go looking for that in a lot of fan works. I know that people do that, but I think that for a lot of Fujin, we don't do that. But
Yes.
when it comes to non-BL fiction or
Mhm.
media, that is where you make it gayer or go in and really deep dive into these so-called subtexts.
So cold. Yeah,
There's nothing subtextual with most of these. Let's be clear.
this is true. But I think it was important to go on this little like sidebar because I
Yeah.
feel like, especially for, as Carola said, especially for a BL podcast, we talk a lot about other things. And it's like, because those other things are still a part of being a BL fan. Like,
Yeah.
to stroke Carola's ego very briefly, most of us wouldn't be here without Sasunaru. Stop it.
I am going. I'm going
Spray
to
bottle.
put this out, and I'm gonna like put it on my phone and watch it whenever I need to be to be
Like when
to
you
hear-
need
whenever I
stimming time.
yeah. I'm just gonna play the audio clip of you saying that we wouldn't be.
This wouldn't. And
I
like
know.
you need a Naruto for that. So like, yeah, the idea that it's like you guys talk about a lot of stuff that isn't BL. It's like, yeah, because I make the other thing gay.
And
Anyways,
yeah, and it's all connected.
it is all connected. But anyways, so there was this massive thing to prove to yourself and to others, and I think also as creators, I felt that a lot. So like when I was like doing my under the table fan fiction publishing for friends,
Your little smut peddling business.
literally, I got a lot of requests from my friends to write increasingly hard stuff. And I did it.
Of course you did. What the hell?
What?
Oh, my pumpkin stopped glowing.
It's the ghost. It's the ghost of our bad decisions.
AKA this very dying
Tea light.
Yeah.
But I got requests to write increasingly unhinged and deranged things.
And you did it.
And I did it. I took food as payment. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I got paid in cookies once.
Wow. I mean, if you were on the internet in the early 2000s, you'll know that cookies was the hard currency. It was always come to the dark side, we have cookies.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And the strange, remember when we talk about like headcanons, like last month we talked about how everyone's like agreed that, oh, so-and-so character is trans or so-and-so character is neurodivergent. Okay, in the early 2000s, there was a very, very clear agreement in fandom, across fandom, that Gaara of Naruto was obsessed with cookies. Someone explain to me where that came from.
Oh, it was this dumb gourd thing. Everyone thought it was like a cookie jar.
Okay.
It was the dumb gourd.
And it's just like everyone and there were all of these fan arts with him with the chocolate chip cookie in his mouth and
yeah, I literally traded I think it was Kakashi Sasuke non-con for chocolate chip cookies.
Of course you did.
Can I help you?
No! Actually, you can't. No one can help me. That's why we're here.
Can I help you with something?
No!
But, there was that need to, again, like as a writer, to feel like I had to prove myself, that I could handle it, that I could take it, that I could produce what my audience wanted. My one weird friend who was willing to trade $5 for handwritten pages of smut.
Those were the days.
That I wrote in class.
Yeah, I also wrote a lot in class.
I wrote so much in class. So that's a little bit of the why. Frankly, we could have an entire episode on just the why.
Let's just have an episode just called Y. And then we'll use the letter Y, so we have both like the Y as in...
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it'll morph in. Because that's what happens. Who was doing this? Whomst?
It was I. It was I!
So one of my favorite memes is it's a long Reddit post, and it's I really love watching cats being rescued from burning houses, and it's like all these cats like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
firefighters, and then at the end it's just one person that looks like he burned the house down, and it's like
Was
it was I that
I?
set the house ablaze, and
That's
like
one of my favorites of
that's
all
one of
time.
my favorite memes of all time, and like while it's easy for me to sound super victimized by like, oh, there was this cabal of older white men who were showing me all this pornography and I was just an innocent little 14-year-old girl. No, I also set the house on fire.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's really easy, and I don't want to diminish that there is a victimization element to a lot of this, especially once the symbiote gets you. So Carola and I have this in common as well, that once we were infected, the first thing we did was infect others.
Yes. Because this is where we get to the part where, see, I never had an older white guy showing me these things.
You were the older white guy?
I was! Exactly. Basically, I somehow stumbled across these things. I was patient 0.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you need to understand. Because while I did have some friends who were also like dabbling, again, you have to remember when I was 14,
Mm-hmm.
we had nothing. Like we had Pokemon and Beyblade. Those were the only animes that aired on Norwegian television, except for the things that were like that we didn't know were anime, like Moomin. But you know, doesn't count. So then we had the Swedish channel, like I mentioned before. I suddenly realized the Swedish channel was showing Sailor Moon, and that was what we had. So when we got a little older, and you know, we started hanging out on the internet, like I had a few friends, like we'd separately discovered things, you know, and like, and then, you know, but it was your regular. It was, you know, I knew about Sailor Moon, they didn't. They introduced me to Dragon Ball. A friend eventually introduces me to Naruto. Like that was that whole thing. But I was the one who discovered BL, who discovered Yaoi, who discovered that stuff, and I spread it like wildfire, and I forced my friends to join me because I needed to have someone to talk with about this. I needed someone to read my stuff.
Yeah, I think that was such a huge part of it. At least, like, again, like for me, when it was in person, that very much feels like grimy in a way that I can't explain it. By the time that moved online, I was just as complicit in this activity. The big thing also being how fast early fans, and to this day, I think most of us still struggle with this, how fast we are to share. I remember reading fic that absolutely grossed me out. Beyond the Alphonse and Edward Elric one, where Ed has to clean his own sperm outside of Alphonse's empty body cavity.
Thank you for the reminder. Thank you for that nice little recap over there.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Though I do admire the writer that took Alphonse's head off his body so he wouldn't know his brother was jerking off into him.
Wow.
That was very kind of you.
Well, Edward knows what he did.
Literally, there is a scene where, like, Alphonse, like, what are you doing? Like, having to clean up the inside of this trash can. Anyways, I wasn't traumatized by fan fiction at all.
Fine,
but, like,
fine.
One of the first things that you do when you encounter something that squicks you out or scares you or upsets you is make other people suffer. It's the first instinct we have of, I know I did this a lot with like doujin.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if I found a doujin that was like super rough, first thing I did was like, you need to read this.
And you know, this is such an interesting thing because it's so parallel to the horror experience.
Yes.
Because everyone's had that one friend who was allowed to watch horror movies or for some reason was super into horror movies and had access to a lot of stuff. And maybe they had an older sibling or someone who like hooked them up, and they would be the one like forcing all of their friends, and even though they were also like pissing themselves out of fear or like being
Right.
grossed out, they were the one you would like they would always have the higher status because they were the one giving it to the others, showing the
Yes.
others, like they were the ones like, oh look, I'm so cool because I have this.
Right. And especially, and at least like I know this is very, very common in Western spaces in like the US, sharing it with people who wouldn't like it intentionally.
Mm.
I remember reading that one Maki Murakami dojin where Diet Yukieri and Diet Suichi Shindo end up doing some disembowelment fucking. And I spread that like it was a contagion.
Yeah, and and I think, I mean, now turning this back into a gravitation episode yet again. Uh, I am so I think it's like it's part gatekeeping instinct and part wanting to be a voice of reason, but like having read all of the dojins and being up on up to date on all of Murakami's works all the time, I get so like because this isn't 2005.
No.
And it's like it's not like you're not going to shock anyone. It just now it makes me mad as if I didn't do it, as if I didn't show people like look at this fucked up gravitation dojin that the author made, and that was your first meeting with the cross section, with the
Yeah.
X-rays, with the like all of that stuff. But now I get very like, okay, but there's so much more to it than that, and I get mad because that's what people want to remember gravitation for. But that is like a whole completely different thing. But back then, when we first found these things, and like, I mean, I love the gravitation dojins, a lot of them. A lot of them I also don't like. And while I think that I have a lot of respect for Murakami, and I definitely think today that the Mega Mix, the Kumaguro mix, isn't the worst one because she's done way worse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's hot. And that wasn't why we spread it, because it wasn't about oh look at this extremely graphic sexy gay sex thing. It was a shock factor.
It was, and I think I shared with Carola before we recorded this video on the history of shock sites, and I want to talk about
because
how fucking 2000s that was. That shock factor was everywhere. I remember being on Snopes.com researching the Kitten Crush videos. Like that fucking shock value thing was currency in the 2000s.
And alongside that, the not telling anyone anything and then just like linking them to a website. Yeah. Thank you, older brother, for Lemon Party. That was very necessary. I needed that in my life. When you linked me that video and I watched it while tidying up and putting up decorations in my house, I was like, the flashbacks were some repressed things came out. And it's like a lot of the things that were mentioned, like a lot of those shock sites or like the things that were being spread on those sites are things that I've never actually seen with my own eyes. And they still give me like massive like trauma because like
and a lot of them I remember seeing tangentially or like hearing about it, but it's
like amazing. To this day I have never seen Two Girls One Cup. Thank fucking God. But that video
noises. Disassociation noises, but like that 2000 shock value I think was so integral to fandom, because here's the thing, both sides of fandom were doing it. They were doing it with hyperviolence or hypersexuality.
Oh yeah.
So they were either,
and if you were lucky you could combine them.
Yes.
Which is where a lot of the hentai comes in.
Yes, but we're not a hentai podcast.
No.
We're a yaoi podcast. And I want to circle back to the mega mixes, because the mega mixes were also a huge part of that like social sharing, where the mega mixes loom very large in my mind because they're some of my favorite gravitation media, especially like Capybara and Panda for obvious reasons. For obvious reasons.
Fine. You're entitled to your opinion.
Thank you. You didn't even say it was wrong. You just said I was talking my opinion.
No,
But
I was busy thinking about Kitsune mix and Okami mix and
I mean, they're all good. But
yeah, they're all good.
like, I'm not. That wasn't saying I'm not negging the other mixes because I have a preference for Aerie getting spit roasted. Like, I'm not. I'm not negging the other ones.
I will say that one of the reasons why Okami Mix is one of my favorites is because of it has some visuals which I do think are mostly in Shuichi's imagination, but also I think Yuki has a dream. But there are a lot of really good ahegao shots of Yuki in that one, and they are so beautiful. Like, yes, you can have beautiful ahegao, okay? It exists.
Maki Murakami can do it. But, like,
so good.
Like, Capybara especially, like, Capybara and Panda loom largely in my mind because of how much, again, gatekeeping, you needed the information about characters from those megamix. There are entire aspects of gravitation that you only get reading those megamixes.
Mm-hmm.
And if
you gotta remember that a lot of them are at the very least semi-canon.
Yeah.
A lot of the later ones in particular.
So, like, if I were to dig up my old, like, I'm pretty sure that there's a Kitazawa and Aerie shipping manifesto that I wrote when I was depressed and listening to Anti-Nostalgic. Because I headcanon that hard, that a lot of the songs that Suichi writes thinking diegetically are about Suichi and Yuki, are actually Yuki about Aerie about Kitazawa. But that's me being weird.
Yeah, that is you being weird. Because I know. Like, fucking fight me.
It's that picture of the duck I sent you. I identify. My pronouns are try me. But like, you know, oh my god, yeah, just me listening to Anti-Nostalgic saying like Kitazawa was his first true love.
I'm having a visceral reaction. I think I just had a brain hemorrhage or something. Like,
so that's what I was doing in my Catholic college.
Oh,
it's like Aerie's one true love is Kitazawa. They're made for each other. They are connected.
Please stop.
But like, so one, how much you needed that for ammunition. So when someone had the audacity to come up to you and say Suichi Shindo is Aerie's soulmate, you had all this canon knowledge right in the background that they're wrong. And you just get to sit on that and hold on to it. Hold it close to your chest.
Which is why I now do a 2-hour panel that you too can get at your convention about why Yuki and Shuichi are soulmates and why Gravitation is actually a very progressive and very good manga. And if you want to hear more about that, hit me up. I will. I will come to a school near you.
Or you can dig into the archives of the digital internet and find me musing on Tumblr about how Kitazawa is Aerie's one true love and Suichi is a sad substitute. What was that anime noise? What fucking...
We both know that you are wrong.
What No, I want to know what fucking panel from Death Note you pulled that ditch out of. Fuck you. Fuck off.
Oh my god.
What of one of Matt's 3 panels did you pull that noise out?
I don't know, but it's probably very close to my heart. I love that boy. I love him.
Needing to share that stuff, one, as proof that you had it, because that was also a big part of the social currency, was, ooh, look at what I have access to. 2, needing to assert dominance. So, like, you know, oh, you think this is hard. I have this. It's like, you know, it's like revealing a trap card in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like,
yeah,
look what I have. Flip. Trauma. You know, you flip over. And it's just not.
What is wrong with us? It's like, here's the literal worst. It's just like.
And you're mad because I'm right.
Yes, you are right. And it's like, which is, again, I think this is one of the reasons why it's so hard for us. I mean, obviously they're also insane, and there's a whole cult at its core. But when you and I look at younger fans today,
Yeah.
it is so hard for us to wrap our heads around the way that they are dealing or like not dealing with uncomfortable topics, because because what the frick were we doing, you know?
Right.
Like,
We were perpetually in this like trauma Olympics of how much we could shock factor scare each other. So like I remember that disembowelment dojin that Murakami sensei did. I shared that with my best friend when we were like early into our friendship, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't," and he viscerally admitted that he didn't like it. It wasn't cool for him,
yeah,
not just because it was yaoi, but because it was someone jerking themselves off through someone else's insides. I should not have been shocked that that did not elicit the same reaction in me and my weird friend group that it did with him.
yeah.
But I was.
But like, imagine, and I thought about this while like, you know, preparing for this episode, because I did realize I asked you in our private chat which episode of ours was it that spawned this episode, and I ended up finding it was, of course, the Asumiko Nakamura special, because of course it was, because fucking Jane was a bit. But like, imagine if we, you know, if our generation, like at the time, if we had if we'd, you know, this, like that era, if that era had gotten mangas like Mad Cave, like Killing Stalking, like, can you imagine the damage we could have done with stuff like that? And I bring up Mad K in particular because that is literally what happens in the first chapter, is that Makoto summons a demon because he wants to fuck his innards.
Yeah.
Like, and if we'd had access to that, like, never mind how I hate using the word inappropriate, because I just think of those horrible white moms in America and the way that they use it, but you know, that's not something you should be reading at 14 years old.
No.
But we, like, the way we were going, it's like the fucking ring virus.
It is.
Except we weren't copying it and passing it on to get rid of the curse.
We were spreading the curse.
No, yeah, because
Yeah, no, it was absolutely like, I compared it to the symbiote mostly to make fun of Carola for being a venom fucker.
Listen.
No.
I was talking to someone the other day who absolutely understands where I'm coming from.
I will not hear you out. Absolutely not. You know, but that's what the symbiote virus does, is that it infects and wants to spread.
Yeah.
And that with that, it takes what's the worst part of you and heightens it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what so much of that performative angst was. It takes the worst parts of you, that insecurity, that anxiety, that person who was gatekept and told that they couldn't. It took all of the worst parts of me and heightened it.
Mm-hmm.
So then I became the symbiote.
Yeah.
I was the one then producing the disemboweling works.
Yeah.
And sharing them.
And it's like, and again, like, going back to what we mentioned in, I mean, we talked about it in the Hatalia episode. We talked about it in the, what the hell? I mean, we talked about it at length in a lot of episodes about how trigger warnings didn't exist. Nope. We didn't, and I mean, obviously we were kids. Like, there were a lot of things that we didn't understand, a lot of things that we didn't have the comprehension of. We didn't have words for a lot of things, but basically, cosplay is not consent didn't exist.
Nope.
Trigger warnings didn't exist.
Nope.
We didn't have the kind of like culture of being, which is interesting because now we're hearing about so much about how kids don't have any empathy because they live online and they don't learn the social skills. But like, we didn't have that kind of like, we didn't consider it to be an empathic skill to consider that you can't just show people just anything, because you don't know what reaction, like, yeah, we purposely did these things to elicit a reaction of shock
Mhm.
or disgust, or to share our, I don't want to say trauma, but like share this with others. And I thought about this the other day, because I was reading, I was at the library, and they had a copy of Osamu Tezuka's Clockwork Apple, which is like an anthology of old Tezuka stories, and
Mhm.
it's really good. But there was this one shot in there where there's like a, it is like a symbiote, because it is something that, like, it takes over people, and there's like an alien. It's kind of like a mix between the symbiote and the thing,
Mhm.
and it literally crawls inside of this woman's spacesuit and inside of her via her vagina. And my immediate response is to take a picture of this, and with the intention of sending on Snapchat to my friends that,
Mhm.
oh, look, even Osamu Tezuka wrote tentacle rape. But then I
Mhm.
stopped myself, because I am not, with the care I have for others now, and like
Mhm.
knowing that people, basically just living in a post Me Too, more like
Aware.
aware world,
Yeah.
I stop myself, but because it doesn't feel right, because I don't know, like, even if it's a friend who I can
Right.
normally like joke about these things with in person, like, terrible things we've seen in anime, or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what headspace they're in when this unsolicited text
Exactly.
comes through. But back then, I would have just sent that
Terrible.
off in a heartbeat, and like,
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was maturity.
yeah,
Obviously,
of course.
it was a different. I hate this argument, but it's true. It was a different time.
It was very
Again,
different.
and also, a lot of that was probably a good old fashioned case of the neurodivergence for a lot of us,
Mm-hmm.
that we just couldn't read those signals and thought that this was okay, and we overstepped boundaries and we didn't care. Um, and I'm the same way. So like I was reading a very, very sad old man yaoi with
Oh no.
Vash and knives earlier,
Oh no.
because you're not supposed to read sad old man yaoi in the morning. That's a nighttime activity. But I was reading it in the
I
morning.
mean, true, actually.
That is a nighttime activity. You
That is
do not.
not how you start your
That's not
day.
how you start the day with fucking knives wishing Vash would have killed him and being angry he's still alive.
Yeah, I've done that. I've, opened my phone to the
Yes.
tab I fell asleep in,
Yes.
the night before, and I started reading, and then I ruined my day because this
Oh
thing
my
was
god. Yes.
sad. And then you just have to kind of like, and then you don't get out of bed because you're just
Right.
reading the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
And there's so much of me that I feel like, an earlier version of me would have just like mass texted this to everyone I know,
Yeah,
because I refuse to be sad alone. We're all going to be sad about Knives, who is haunted by a dead Wolfwood, because he gets to keep living, and he knows that Vash would want Wolfwood in his place.
mm.
It's so sad and so good, but that's not something that I'm just like, be free! Like, that can fuck you up. Like, if you're not
Yeah,
in the headspace for that, that's not okay. And like, there's a knee-jerk reaction when you see something that upsets you or shocks you to share it with other people. At least I know, like, for me, to almost test my emotional regulation,
mm.
because that's going to lead us into the what was the point. I know, at least for me, sometimes I tended to share explicit or shocking things because I needed a gauge. I grew up with a lot of repressed emotions as a kid.
Mm.
So my feelings never feel valid. I never trust my gut. The whole like, oh, trust your gut instincts. My instinct is to fawn react. I will sit there and take it, and I will be as uncomfortable for as long as possible
Yeah.
because I have the trauma. So I'm not a good gauge. So like again, like when people ask like, oh, was this uncomfortable to read? Yeah, I read all of it multiple times.
Mm.
It's like, wasn't this hard? Yeah, all the time,
Every time.
every time. It actually got worse.
Yeah.
So like needing other people to engage in that
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I think that leads us very nicely into what was the fucking point?
What
And
was the point?
we talked a lot about dominance. We talked a lot about, you know, we talked a lot about needing to show that social currency. But I think it's that emotional regulation part that I think is big, especially when we're talking like early 2000s.
Mm,
It's, I know at least for me, I think so much of this stuff just went over my head entirely.
yeah.
Like I just didn't process it. I didn't think about it. It went into my eyes and then out my ears.
Yeah, I think for me it was a lot like that too. Obviously, I
Mm-hmm.
think that like I don't know how to phrase this without sounding like, oh, I mean, I was actually emotionally well regulated. But like, I mean,
Must be kind.
I don't have the trauma in that way. Like there were a lot of
Here.
things that were hard for me and that I had
Mm-hmm.
like I had a lot of I've always struggled with, like mental illness. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've never been well, like I've always had these issues. But I don't but like I had a stable family. Like I've always been, even though I have been very dysfunctional mentally, I am also mentally strong. So
Yes.
like a lot of the things that I went through as a kid, when I think about them as an adult, like when I was being bullied, for instance, like because I was taught by like my grandma, who's my favorite person, who literally told me when I was a kid, and also my mom, that like whatever people say to you, just choose to ignore it, don't care. And I took that so to heart
Mm-hmm.
that basically nothing really faced me, because I've always been very confident and very like I've been very confident, very very um very sure in myself. But when I think back on it, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ, that was pretty terrible. And mostly in like looking at it from a way that it was so visible to everyone that I
Mm-hmm.
was being bullied. And
Mm-hmm.
yet so many like teachers, whatever, they didn't do anything. Like it wasn't addressed. And again, it didn't like I got away pretty, pretty well from it. Like I don't have any
Mm-hmm.
like lingering trauma. Like all of my traumas are coming from like other things.
Mood.
but but looking at it as an adult, I'm like, why didn't anyone like at least try to do something?
Mm-hmm.
So for me it wasn't so much about that emotional regulation, as definitely it was that a lot of it for me was that dominance and like
Mm-hmm.
wanting to prove myself. And I think
Mm-hmm.
especially because I was like in your words, I was the hentai prince, I was the yaoi
Yes.
prince, I was. So for me, like my friends when we were teenagers, they started calling me, they called me sensei, because I was
Mm-hmm.
the one providing everyone with all the content, with all the knowledge. And because I was the one who was kind of like the go-to pervert of the group,
Mm-hmm.
I constantly had to prove that I was the worst one.
Yes.
And
There.
like so
Yes.
constantly, like, yeah.
The mask. So what I had like three main nicknames when I was in high school, and one of them was Kakashi Sensei because I would
Mm,
walk around in the halls reading yaoi in between classes, and
yeah.
I could like read and not bump into people because like crowded American high school. It was always very cool to like I just like yaoi just fully in face and just not hit
Mm.
anyone. So Kakashi Sensei was a huge nickname of mine that I took a lot of pride in. The other was Roy Mustang, and I'm starting to realize that's because of the bipolar.
Ooh.
That's that wasn't a compliment.
That,
They're
yeah.
saying that
No.
you're a pervert and mentally ill.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't because of my strong leadership skills.
Well, it's the mental
It
illness.
was the mental illness. Um, but
Just
that
lighting
yeah,
fires everywhere.
I told you about lighting fires behind the weight room when I was in school.
Yeah.
Everything about my high school experience was normal.
Of course, very, very well adjusted.
But like, yeah, you can never let that mask slip. And I
Mm.
think a lot of that feeds into the gatekeeping, but a lot of it also feeds into ego.
Yeah.
It well, my friends can handle it. Why can't I?
Mm.
And I think that's where I tie in a lot, like with the emotional regulation part, because
Yeah.
like, especially having more on that trauma side, I feel like I constantly have to prove that I'm not weak.
Mm.
That especially having trauma for so long, has been linked to weakness.
Mm.
That it's especially with like the very modern understanding with like trigger like that Tumblr trigger warning culture. I was so determined to buck against that that I would like exposure therapy my way through things that made me viscerally uncomfortable so I could prove I'm not a delicate little snowflake. I'm fine. Yeah, I have trauma, but it's not my whole personality. And I'm just like in the back, like sobbing because
Yeah.
I can't process this, and
And
it's
like,
bothering me.
ironically, that's sort of also another way of making it your entire personality.
Yeah,
Like,
it's literally the other half
you're
of it.
just tricking yourself,
Yeah.
and yeah, absolutely. And like, I also like, and also again, like what you said about things going over your head, because yeah,
Mm.
a lot of this had to do with maturity, and I think
Yep.
a lot of the time we didn't understand it, and a lot of the time, when you say my friends can handle it, why can't I? There's one thing kids do, is that we gaslight each
We
other.
lie. Yeah.
Like, we're always, because that's always, and it doesn't matter what it's about. Like, it can be about like hardcore porn, it can be like
Yeah.
hardcore hentai, it can be horror films. Like, you're always going to sit around like pretending like, oh, you think that's bad, I'm feeling perfectly fine, but the person saying that is having the same feelings you are. Like, because
Exactly.
we're just trying to outdo each other. And like in the Nakamura episode, we talked a lot about how we were basically just like little edgelords who were
We
just
were.
trying to outdo each other.
We were. We were. We absolutely were. And like you just unlocked a memory. So I
Oh
remember
no.
I remember with one of my really, really close friends, it's actually my prom date. Uh we ended up sitting in my bedroom one day reading that Mega Mix chapter of Aerie getting it double timed by Toma.
As one does.
And like he is like flabbergasted, like mouth agape. He's like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like he knew gravitation because he hung out in my weep circle. I mean, prom date. Like
Yeah.
he knew about gravitation. I wouldn't have called him a foodon back in the day, but he was aware. He knew I liked it.
Mm,
So he's just sitting there. Like that was the most shocking thing I could show a normie
yeah.
without it just being like a snuff film. Because
Yeah.
like I could do that, but that's too much. Like that was the most shocking thing I could show a normie and like prove. Look at how hard I am.
Yeah.
Look at what I read without a reaction at all. And like watching him like visibly be uncomfortable with this
Yes.
was like
I mean, we are painting ourselves in such a terrible light right now, but that was literally what it was like.
But that's what we did. Like
That's what we did. And oh, hello, welcome back.
oh, the cat. I was like, what the fuck are you
Cat's
talking about?
back. He's trying to pull my earpieces out because he's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a flattering light in hindsight, but I'm willing to share it because I think
Yeah.
as we talk about this, more of y'all are going to see that light in yourselves.
Yeah, and again, like we talk about this when we talk about fictional characters, but also about about people and about the culture we live in.
Mhm.
That people grow, people mature,
Yeah.
and just because like we and I mean, part of this episode is us talking about how this still affects us to this day and how it has shaped our fandom experience and continues to do so. But we have definitely matured and like learned from these experiences. And
Yeah.
again, I wouldn't do this today.
No.
But yeah, no, but I had a thought, because another thing that I think is very important to both of our experiences, in wanting to show how hardcore we were, how much we could handle, is also the fact that we were born female coded, like as women. Like just the
Mhm.
fact that you always, as an AFAB person, you always have to try twice as
Mhm.
hard, work twice as hard, be better, be stronger, be more knowledgeable, like your experience in the comic book store. But just like, because back then it was kind of like, oh, being a girl who liked those things, oh, you're kind of cool, but you have to prove yourself. But if you were like
Right.
the worst, like, and that is exactly like, maybe some of my friends will disagree with this if they are for some reason listening, and like
Girly friends.
and I love my friends and like my group of friends, but I've always been kind of like the one girl, and being like, okay, I'm the one girl, but I am the most hardcore and insane out of all of us. And it was such a, like, maybe I wasn't, but I felt like I had to be.
Yes.
and there's just such a, and again, this is why we call this the performative angst episode.
It was a fucking performance.
It was such a like, and a lot of these things, absolutely. Like, my obsession with Battle Royale is not a performance. Like, I fucking love this film,
yeah.
but it definitely felt good being able to shove my obsession and my knowledge about this film in everybody's faces.
Yeah.
To prove that I was worthy.
That's me with Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm a girl, but I like real movies with blood and tits.
Yeah, like, I was such, and I don't know if I've talked about this, but when I was in, I think we were in the 9th or 10th grade. So we were about like 14, 15. Mm-hmm. And this was, I was in my Battle Royale era. I'd recently fallen into the Battle Royale era. Like, I like Battle Royale. I liked, like, and I watched a lot of, like, I still watch a lot of like comedies, and I watch a lot of horror. Mm-hmm. And my friends, my two female friends, wanted to watch Legally Blonde, and I was such a bitch about it because I was like, I was in my peak. Oh my god, that is such a dumb pink chick flick film. I rewatched Legally Blonde recently. Right. It's so good and it's so smart.
It is.
But I was too busy being a performative bitch.
So can I confess something?
Yes.
In the Legally Blonde DVD case, there was an application to join the Delta News, and I was a Delta New. So,
I don't think you had that.
Because yes, like, we say performative for a reason. So what Carola and I did was what we describe as in-log behavior, not like other girls.
Oh.
We were both, I mean, I'm not saying this to be rude to you, but we were.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not, like, this isn't me throwing shade. I'm in the same boat. We were both in-logs, and we took pleasure in that.
Yeah, like, younger me would absolutely delight in that, the other girls meme with, the blonde makeup girl versus the goth girl with the books.
Literally me. And, like,
could never be me now. Like, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand in, like, girly culture, but
I don't hate it.
No, and, like, I'm like, you do you, like, you know.
Right, like, but no, that was absolutely me, especially in high school. Again, formative time. I am trying my best to fit in. I always fit in better with nerds and outcasts because that's how I felt. Mm-hmm. When in reality, I was pretty popular and well-adjusted. But, when I play back the tape, it's like, I was a brooding outcast all by myself. Hi, Amanda!
But it's like, again, I am so ashamed by the amount of times I brought up One Tree Hill on this podcast. But it's like my one point of reference of, like, relatively new Western culture. And there's this one episode where they are all sitting in the classroom and their teacher is, like, assigning them roles, and it's like they're all gonna assign each other roles, and then Peyton is sitting there, and the teacher points at Peyton, and the entire class goes, "Prom queen," and she's like, "Oh, come on, you guys, I'm totally an outcast," because she wants to be this dark, broody, like, alternative girl, but she's a cheerleader and she's popular and she's always in these love triangles, and it's like,
So, like, I think being an in-log was a huge part of it, because, like, oh my god, if you guys thought that I made shonen anime my whole personality now, you would hate me at 15. You would pick me up like a fucking soccer ball and punt me into the next county. If you think that I make being a pretentious fuckwit my personality right now, you would not be able to be breathing the same air as me when I was 16, 17 years old.
Oh my god.
You would suffocate in the heat of my own ego.
It's, and it's like, and I think one of the reasons, I think it's so good that we talk about this, like, obviously someone could take this out of context, someone could use it against us. Like, I mean, we are constantly putting ourselves on the verge of being cancelled on this podcast, so who even cares, right? You've already been cancelled by guinea pig stands, no less. But you...
things I've done.
But I think it's very important to lift up these experiences as
Yeah.
something that, because I think that a lot of us, we went through these things because kids are dumb.
Yeah.
Kids do irrational things,
Yeah.
and people aren't perfect, and no, we all have these weird skeletons in our closets. I'm just airing mine out, just
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes back to the point that you made about how kids have to rush in from like adolescence straight to adulthood,
mm,
and they're not allowed to have this imperfect stage. Now, I'm not using that as a rationale for when teenagers or young adults are racist, which is what a lot of people do. So, like when an influencer said the N word a bunch of times in their 20s, no, that's not an excuse. But like, I am so grateful I got to have my imperfect stage on a version of the internet that is dead.
yeah.
I am so thankful every single day that I got to be that messy, problematic edgelord when the furthest my words would go was MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy. And not because like I fear repercussion, I fear consequence. No. It's because it has allowed me to grow and reflect. So we can do things like this.
Yeah.
Have an entire episode on how trash we were to fucking everyone and ourselves.
Oh yeah.
So the point of doing this self-flagellation exercise of being the king of shit mountain, which is what we were trying to do.
I know that we have, we already delved so hard into it, but again, like, what the hell was wrong with us?
Like, there's so much.
Oh my god!
I have answers. They're not satisfying.
Oh, the shame.
So us trying so hard to be the king of shit mountain, we were doing that because, one, we felt like it was necessary in the groups that we were in. Two, we felt ashamed of how we might react in other scenarios. I know, again, like you mentioned, being a girl, I made it my whole personality that I wasn't like other girls, that I liked boy things. I don't like Barbie's Ocean Adventure where you get to play as a dolphin. I like fighting games. I like playing Super Smash Bros. Melee. I don't read Sailor Moon. I read Naruto and Bleach. I don't like dumb girl movies. I only like the serious boy movies. Like Akira Kurosawa, who I'd never watched when I was 16.
Yeah.
You hadn't seen it. Shut up. That was such a huge part of it. So it was this like weird need to prove ourselves. It was also very much, circling it back, the times. I think about the stuff that was on the internet back in those days. Like I've been listening to a lot of stuff about Mr. Beast getting canceled, which means a lot of people are talking about Newgrounds, which I don't know. Did you experience Newgrounds?
Yes, but I have very fond memories of it, but it is literally just because we literally just watched the same videos over and over, and they were all like they were mostly Legendary Frogs videos about Final Fantasy.
Yes,
and a few like others.
Yeah, and like sites like that. I mean, while none of it, I didn't find it particularly traumatizing back then, except for I think it was on like Adult Black Sheep or something like that. It was one of those Flash sites that was similar to Newgrounds. There was this game where you play as a polar bear and you have to use a club to hit penguins, and the penguins land into spikes, and you win based on how far you can hit the penguins, and they end up like all visceral and bloody and gory. Like, but that level of shock, of gore, was so common in the 2000s. You had to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was no space to, and like, I can still think about this game, and like, it still kind of like gives you the, it still kind of gives you the heaves a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, it was so necessary to social existence to be okay with this. Like, I remember watching 300 for the first time, the Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing gayer than 300.
No, I mean,
Well, yeah, there are some gayer things, but not by much. Um, and like feeling bad that I couldn't get through some of the scenes because it made me uncomfortable.
I think it's so interesting because on one hand, I, all of this, because we've literally just talked about all of this for almost 2 hours, but at the same time, at the, at simmering somewhere, in my base level, is in my internal basement, is, my phobia, my emetophobia, right? And when I was in my mid-teens, I was finally starting to realize that that's what it was. And at first I had such a I still have a very hard time talking about it, because I think it's because I'm basically so easily triggered by it that I can't really talk about it, because it's just it, and it's so debilitating. But once I started kind of like daring to open up to my friends about it, and like I would ask them, is this film safe for me? Can you tell me when I need to look away? Can we mute when the scene happens? And so when it came to stuff like that, I had no problem saying like, I don't want to watch that because I've heard that people have this kind of reaction, or I've heard that that's something that happens in here. So I was very good at taking a step back on that level, which is so funny, because then I felt I've never felt weak about that. I've had the feeling that I'm inconveniencing everyone else, because everyone has to take into consideration that I need special attention during those kind of things. But I never felt weak or like I was ruining anything when I needed to take a step back because of that. But everything else, I'm powering through.
Exactly. I think that's so funny because like I know, at least for me, like when you explained your phobia and everything to me, it made sense a lot easier to me again now as an adult. That is absolutely something I would have exploited as teenagers. So just be glad that we met when I was a mature adult. My phobia was fully developed.
And I have had that happen to me because people don't understand the difference between like a squick and a phobia.
Yes.
And I have been put through so much BS, which is why I didn't want to tell anyone about it, because they would exploit it.
So as much as we romanticize, it would be cool if we met when we were kids. No. Been awful to you, and I apologize in hindsight.
Yeah, but I also feel like I mean, I've talked so much about how terrible I was, and I was terrible, and I absolutely did subject a lot of my friends to things that they were uncomfortable with or that they didn't want to see. But because I have this phobia, if they had a phobia, like I have a friend who's terrified of spiders, like she can't see spiders on film, I would never subject her to that.
Right.
So I would take that into consideration. But if you were only uncomfortable because you were uncomfortable, then tough luck. I would make you see it.
Yeah, there was this need. I know, like, I did that, like, fake exposure therapy thing a lot when I was younger, where it's like, oh, if I'm super afraid of something, I need to see it a lot. And it didn't help. It just made me more afraid of things, and I just ended up with, like, a really, really gross search history. But, okay.
And also, back then, we didn't know how to delete our search history.
No. So your family knew exactly what you were doing. Oh my God. Which led to some very awkward conversations with my aunts that I'm going to see this weekend.
Yay!
They were so funny. I was talking to one of my aunts, and I was like, "Oh, I moved up our recording with you and me and Carola this weekend, so I could be free when they're in town." And my aunts are like, "Oh, we could just like sit in your living room and like listen in." I'm like, "No. No.
I mean, I would love to meet your aunts, but I don't think this conversation would have
This is not it. They want to meet you, but okay. So wrapping up, because it's been almost 2 hours.
Yeah, and we still, if you, like, we are only halfway through the original outline.
Oh shit, we are!
Although
I forgot to scroll down!
We have touched upon a lot of these, and I think that, yeah.
Okay. Ah, shit!
We had a lot to say this month, okay?
I'm scared myself.
I'm sorry.
Oh no!
I mean, we're kind of on point one of, oh boy, do the wounds leave scars.
Okay, so yeah, so that's what I was doing. So like that proving yourself, that constant like did you ever this is gonna sound weird. Did you ever play that dumb game that high schoolers do where you poke yourself with a safety pin until you form a callus?
No,
Okay.
but I think I know what you mean.
So you so we would do that. Turns out today that's called self-harm. We didn't call it that back then. But
No.
a dumb thing that we did, especially with thumb and pointer, was to just poke ourselves with a safety pin or a needle until you formed a thick callus.
For what purpose?
Uh, it was the pussy way of doing Russian roulette.
You're in Texas, so technically you guys could have played real Russian roulette.
That's what I'm saying.
That's fucking terrifying, actually.
Yeah, so like that was. Well, also like a lot of Russian roulette in the States is with knives.
Hmm.
You get a big Bowie knife, and you just.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
think I
yeah,
had people in my class who tried to do that in home ec.
and it didn't work, did it?
No, but like, do you think our school could afford proper knives?
No. And
Like,
we're in Texas. Everyone and their mom fucking hunts. Everyone has like gutting knife.
yeah.
So yeah, you would form this really really thick callus by continually hurting yourself. Some people use lighters. Some people use sewing needles. Some people used hot sewing needles. And that's what I feel like a lot of this performative angst was, but turned inwards.
Mm.
It was that continually hurting yourself to build a callus. Now, in hindsight, I quite like the callus that I've built up. I talked to one of my friends who is also, black, hyper competent, and, can take on God. And as much as we admit that we hate how cruel the world has had to be to us to make us this iron hard, this rock hard, we also can't imagine living without it.
Yeah.
So would I trade everything to have two living parents and a correctly functioning, brain chemical response system? Of course I would. But I don't, and this is how I found ways to cope. But when you build up that callus that way, those wounds leave scars.
Mm-hmm.
And Carola and I, especially in the process of going through these episodes and talking, we started noticing those scars coming up and realizing that the common thread was this. Because when we first started noticing it, we just assumed that we were trash, which still correct.
Two things can be true at the same time.
Things can be true. A lot of it we associated with just being trash, which yes, we were. But also a lot of it was because of this performative angst issue. So here are some of those scars that have been left behind. We're going to go back to that Jano Spete episode. Forcing your way through things that upset you. I told y'all how I read Jano Sabete.
Yep.
There was no switch in my brain that said, you can leave. Like, it's so funny because I know a lot of like modern fandom is like, it's like, oh, if you find a fan fiction that you don't like, just close out. Just do this. Do you have any idea how many fics I've doom read just because I'm there?
No, but it's true. Like, and we say this all the time when we talk about cultivating your fandom experience, cultivating your online spaces. Like, don't, instead of being a horrible, hateful anti, just click out. But we are very bad at following our own advice a lot of the time. And that...
fucking.
Yes. And this is literally because we grew up like this. Because we were so... And, like, I'm a lot better at this now, depending on what it is.
Hmm.
But I still will, like, whether that is fucking hate watching 5 seasons of Utapri, or because I'm just not a quitter, unfortunately for me. But also just like, because like I've said multiple times, I've just gotten, and this is the experience of, an early BL fan, an old school BL fan, is that you just learn to ignore the things you didn't like or the things that upset you because you didn't have a lot of other options. So
Right.
I still do this, and a lot of the time I do it in like, well, maybe it will get better,
Yeah, there is
and a
this
lot of the time it's just like,
also,
I've seen worse.
yes, there's that. There's this weird duality of like maybe it improves. Like I know I get a lot of FOMO sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to series that it's like, oh man, I wish that I gave this a bigger chance. And sometimes I don't, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I do wish, like, wow, I wish that I could feel what everyone else is feeling. Me staring at Yuri on Ice. So many people have such nice things to say about it. I wish it made me feel anything. Um,
Made me feel a lot.
I know, and I love that for you. I I cannot express how fundamentally broken I still feel to this day when I listen to people be like, Yuri on Ice changed my life. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's lovely.
I mean,
I just,
it didn't change my life.
I
I
know.
love it a lot, but it didn't change my life.
Yes. But like, I cannot express to you how fucking broken I feel every time that happens. Like, I feel like something is wrong with me. Um, so one of the ways that those old wounds show up is forcing yourself to go through things that upset you. Now, we have very mixed feelings about trigger warnings. What are you typing?
I'm just writing a reminder to myself.
Oh, so so I know for me, I struggle with trigger warnings because I'm very much like in the artist camp of if it's there, it's for a reason, even when it's bad.
Hmm.
So like, well, no, when it's bad, I especially don't like it, but especially because I'm lying. I hate like those Phoenix moments, those fridging moments. I hate those. So I'm lying. Uh, do I need to explain Phoenix or fridging?
Maybe.
Okay. So a woman's Phoenix moment is usually unlocked during some kind of traumatic event. It is often sexual
Of
assault,
course it is.
but it's usually something that's invasive and horrible. And it's a reference to Jean Grey in the X-Men comics becoming the Dark Phoenix.
Of
Something
course it is.
horrible happens to her. Sometimes it is sexual assault, and this cosmic entity enters her and releases her true power, and she becomes the Dark Phoenix, and she is terrifying and hot and murderous and hot
And
and
I will never escape Jean Grey, will I?
never,
Oh my god.
never. Uh,
Ugh.
and she's all these things, but that's her powerful moment. More modern fans will see that in Game of Thrones with Sansa Stark, where she gets her Phoenix moment after being raped by Ramsay Bolton.
It's always, I mean, not always, but
Yeah. Or Daenerys Targaryen gets it after being raped by Khal Drogo.
hmm.
And Cersei's perfect. No notes. And Cersei is perfect, and I love her. No notes. So that's your Phoenix moment. It's usually tied to trauma of some kind. It is often very much a symbol of like, it's like in the edgy like urban fantasy movie where a woman gets sexually assaulted. She cuts off all her hair and starts wearing black makeup, and then she becomes a vigilante girl with a dragon tattoo. Sorry, sorry about that. Girl with a dragon tattoo. But that's a trope there, and it's a reference to the comic books. Fridging is a reference to Green Lantern comics with Kyle Rayner, who is the best Green Lantern because he wants to use his powers to get revenge on his enemies and to get girls. Goals. Um, Hashtag goals.
Takes notes. Okay.
Yeah, literally, he's my favorite. And the minute you read him, it's like, ah, yes, that's why. He had this dumb hot girlfriend who was very important to him, and one of his enemies, to get back at him, kills his girlfriend and stuffs her in the fridge. So when Kyle Rainier comes home and he opens the fridge, there's a dead body and it's his girlfriend. It's like, ah! So fridging refers to halting a woman's progress or killing her for the sake of propelling a man's story. You see it a lot in comics. You see it a lot everywhere because, it's misogynist. But you get a lot of like equal parts fridging and phoenixing with a lot of this. So yeah, like there's this desire to almost power through stuff that upsets you because you need that like phoenix moment. It's like, look, I conquered this smut fic. I'm bigger than my trauma. Yeah. I survived this sad movie this one time. And it's dumb. It's hitting yourself and then bandaging your own wounds. An interesting parallel to what you were talking about earlier, where it's like you respect phobia a lot. So there's one trauma that I respect a lot, or have always respected. I mean, obviously I still do, but like, so mine is death of a parent, obviously.
Yeah.
So when there are movies and shows that have that, when you have dead parents as a kid, you tend to attract other people that have dead parents. So, like, we warn each other. Like, we try to be vague about it because, like, sometimes it ruins or spoils.
Yeah.
But we try to be like, hey, this is not dead parent approved. Just letting you know. So when you get to that, you were warned and you can do whatever you need to do to get there.
Yeah.
So, like, I had to do that with Avengers Endgame because I didn't know it was coming. And then it happened, and I was with my friend who had also lost her dad young, and we were holding each other sobbing.
Yeah.
And when I went back and I wrote my review about it, and I told my other friends about it, hey, no spoilers, this is not dead parent approved. So, like, that was the one that I always took really seriously because, same, like, it's not, in my head, it wasn't weak to be upset over that, but if I can't get through this fictional non-con, then I'm a wimp and I need to be stronger.
Yeah. And when you say that, like, I think it's important, not that I don't think that anyone understands this, but just in case, that doesn't mean that you think that anyone who can't get through non-con content, for instance, is weak. This is just reflecting on you.
On us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the time, because you wouldn't have been able to survive early fandom if you couldn't sit through a horrifying amount of non-con.
Because that was just, unfortunately, and I never got that, and I think that that's one of those things, just to like add on another experience, like, even though we've been here forever, but just that I've never been into non-con or dub-con. Like, now I'm a bit more, I think I understand more of it now. Like, it depends on how it's done.
Yes.
But I was like, and I think as long as it was tagged, I avoided it. The problem with a lot of, like, for instance, original BL or like Dojin at the time was that they weren't tagged. Fanfics were tagged.
Yes.
But not Dojins, not originals, not, whatever you came across online in fantasy or whatever. So you wouldn't you wouldn't know how to to deal with that. So but I never understood. So I never forced myself through that. I think I was very understanding that that was something that I didn't like. But I think that I also had a lot to do with it kind of going back to the same thing, which is I was there for the porn. And I wore the porn crown. And so I needed it to be hot. And I didn't find that to be... Yeah. Right. So I didn't need to read that, and I didn't feel any less than because of it, because I was like, I just don't think that this is hot. So
that's funny to me, because I actually kind of did the reverse, where when I was younger, especially, I was super into dub-con and non-con. I wrote almost exclusively non-con. And now, it's not that I don't like it, It's that it has to be done a very certain way for me to get through it. Because if it's just assault for the sake of assault, that's not, I mean, it was never fun, but that's not fun.
No, but exactly, which is why I have I've changed my stance on dubcon, because I realized that dubcon can be so many things, and
Yeah.
it can be, and like it can, and especially because this is what we do. We analyze, we discuss, we break down things. And so dubcon often brings up a lot of interesting analysis and discussion and character motivation, and why was this done, and how is it connected to how they react later on. And so there's a whole thing, but we also talk a lot about this, how, like, when you talk about the fridging and the Phoenix moment, that sexual assault is such an easy, cheap out.
It is.
As a plot point for women and gay men in fiction. And so it's different. It does nothing for me. Like,
yeah, it does nothing for me when it's pointless. And I mean, I'm never gonna say it has, like, oh, it has a point again, like the Phoenix moment, like, I'm better because I was assaulted. No, it never has a fucking point. But here's the caveat to all this. Having gone through a performative angst era doesn't mean that I don't still like darker themes.
I love dark themes.
I still prefer darker themes. Like, if anything, it's made me appreciate them more because I can imagine these characters more complexly rather than a vehicle to dump my non-con on.
Yeah.
Like, put $1 in the box. Amanda mentions twittering birds never fly. I can empathize so much more with Yashiro now because while he has indeed done some non-con and has been non-conned, there's deeper emotion there than if I was just trying to power through it to get to the hot boy stuff.
Yeah, but it's kind of like what I mentioned in the live, that I've been recently, like my most recent read was The Warehouse, the manga.
Yes.
Because I'd been sitting on it for the longest time, but it was really hard to get the final volume, so I never read it, and I finally got volume 5, so I binged it, and it's so, like, it's not on Killing Stalking level. I still think Killing Stalking is a better story, but this one is, like, because it's literally 4 volumes of kidnapping and non-con and sexual abuse, and then in the final volume, it kind of, you're kind of rooting for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's because it's complex. Like, it's that story wouldn't exist without those elements. But if you just use that element, like, as the only way to make a character more complex, like, there's a difference there.
There is. Exactly.
There's a big difference.
So,
but yeah, my point is, I still enjoy, like, darker themes because they're complex and they make you think.
Yes. Sticking with series far past the point where it's good. How many of you have been in an abusive relationship with a series that stopped being good a long time ago?
Or was never good to begin with? Again, I know it's terrible, but again, my hate watching of Utapri, because I was queer baited, and I am using that term correctly. And then I just kind of never gave up. I kept hoping there would be a homo moment.
Disassociates and super hulock.
Fucking everything. Yeah. So, yeah.
Amanda off in the corner disassociating. Looking at Supernatural for 15 fucking years. It's gonna be gay. They're gonna do the gay, right?
It's gonna be gay. Happen.
It's gonna happen any minute now. Or on the last 3 episodes. It's gonna happen any second now. You're thinking about rebooting BBC Sherlock, and I will not go back.
But again, it's like, if you weren't there, I don't think you can understand how we could delusion ourselves into thinking that this was actually going to happen.
I don't know how you could dilute yourself into thinking those characters were straight.
That too.
Like, Super Hulock, we're not going to get on that tangent because it's already been 2 hours. But here's the other thing. Sharing Social sharing of disturbing content with others, the perpetuation of the cycle. So
The
Carola and I,
virus.
yes. So Carola and I both talked about this. That was a really really bad habit of ours. I know both of us have also expressed getting much much better about that with age and maturity, and also just
Mm.
like working that empathy muscle. Now, there are still times where it's like, hey, this was awful and I want you to read it, Death by Dragon fucking. But it's not thrown in anyone's face. It's passive. It's, hey, I read this. I still don't know what up is. If you want to join me,
Yeah.
and no one's making you do it.
And you're not just throwing it at people without context to
Yes.
see their reaction when you know what their reaction
Yes.
is going to be, which is the big difference. Like,
Yes.
absolutely, do I want someone to come and suffer with me in a lot of
Yes.
these things? Yes. But,
Well, and also, like, I don't know if you ever, I mean, I'm sure you were participant of the Yaoi hostage situation where someone gives you a manga and leers over your shoulder like an owl
I
for
think
the entire
no, I was the person doing that.
Or
to
the
others.
owl.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was the owl.
I've been both, but like where someone like slides you something and they stay right next to you, studying your facial features, looking for that reaction. I have been both. I have both been the owl and the victim.
I've had that done to me with a lot of films, though.
Yes. So, there is that social sharing part of it that like is still very base. And like, yeah, if you're in our Discord regularly, you guys hear about like, hey, I read this fic that was awful and scarred me. Anyways, here's the link. Like, it's passive.
Yeah, like I am never in our Discord, but if I am, trust assured that I've seen something on the internet that upset me.
Yes.
And what do? I dump it in the
Back
Discord.
over to Discord. Exactly. Like, I live in our Discord. That's my house. But like, if I'm talking about something, it's probably because it upset me or bothered me. And there's a lot of Schadenfreude and like I'm better than you ego shit with that, which we don't have time to unpack because it's been 2 hours.
Oh, that's what the live is for. Don't worry.
Yeah, that will definitely unpack the Schadenfreude because we didn't unpack the Schadenfreude, Carola.
Oh God, I am so tired.
We're almost done.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance when it comes to disturbing content. So there's a lot of stuff that now just kind of like slots over my head and I don't really feel it too deeply. And a lot of that is the brain protecting itself from itself.
Yeah.
So that cognitive dissonance is there in part because of how much I read that I could not process. And to this day, I still struggle with in some pieces of fiction. Not that I can't get through it, but it doesn't stick around. It's like when you delete files on your computer, you have your recycling bin and you have like your temporary files.
Yeah.
Like it goes immediately to temporary files. It doesn't last, it doesn't linger, there's not a vestige of it. It's just absorbed and then pump and dump, it's gone.
Yeah, and like I've been and I know that for a lot of things, like even though I said that, I've grown more empathic and I'm more aware of things. And I am, but I'm also and I can and always have been, like I'm not the most emotional person. I'm not the most empathetic person. That's just, my personality. That's just how I work. And so I have a very high tolerance for a lot of things, and like things don't necessarily affect me. And I've noticed that, but also because I have consumed so many things, and that I notice a lot of time when I'm like watching stuff with, with my girlfriend, with my friends, that they have very strong reactions to things, like whether that is discomfort or just like something's really sad, and I'm just sitting there like stone faced because, and I don't want to be like I don't want to be my 14-year-old self and turn around and say, oh, come on, it's not that bad.
Right.
But in my head, because I'm just so jaded from a lot of things.
Yeah, I think
combined with my natural personality.
I think jaded's a good way to describe it. I wore this shirt for a reason because so much of that early fandom was egging each other on
Mm-hmm.
to push those boundaries.
More
So,
deeper.
yep.
もっと深く.
So, yeah, I thought about what I was wearing today. It was very
I
intentional.
also, I'm wearing the problematic shirt. You can't
I
see
love
it.
that's my favorite shirt. I realized I panel a lot in that shirt, and it's so funny to me. Just being a panelist, like I'm an authority on this subject. Also, I'm here to fuck shit up. Oh, but there's a lot of cognitive dissonance when it comes to disturbing content, and like the cognitive dissonance also feeds into the forcing your way through things that upset you. I know I've told the story a million times, but reading in these words, uh, comes to mind when I did that, where that is a very graphic BL that features a murderer and a cop. And it's good. I like it a lot. Like now that I'm able to read it without the trauma, but the first time I read it, it was so and I just kept going. There was no button in my brain that said you can put this down. There was no switch that said you can leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's someone gifted you this because you said you wanted it. And now here's your punishment for being an asshole is this non-con. Enjoy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you power through it. And then I went downstairs to go talk to a priest with my family.
Good thing there was a priest available.
That's how Catholic my family is. We just had a priest over.
There's just the house priest.
He made holy water that night. It was quite nice.
Was that when you learned?
No, I learned actually much earlier than that. I learned in like junior high.
Of course.
Sometimes I wonder what my old religion teacher would think of me now. And I don't think he'd be shocked.
Do you think he ever Googles you? Because then
I still know his full name, so because he had 3 first names as a name.
Wow.
I remember that. I still remember his full name. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, and if he does know who I am. I don't think that he's surprised, but I think he's disappointed. I don't think he's shocked.
Well,
that doesn't mean he's happy.
Yeah.
And conversely to the sharing is staying in your lane to the point where you are completely blind to everything else.
Mm-hmm. I put that in the outline because I was watching a video on early 2000s fandom the other day, and the person who made the video was talking about how so often you it's kind of like what you talked about with the layers of hell, or like the factions of fandom, and they were talking about the same thing, how the shoujo people only read shoujo, the shonen people only read shonen, and this created I think this created a lot of like we've talked about the blind spots, but that you stayed in your lane so much that you would only read your disturbing content because that was your brand.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, and not only because that was what that's your jam, that's what you enjoy, but also because God forbid you ruined your reputation by reading something else. Or
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think again that's why we called it the performative angst. It was a dance. We were putting on a show because I couldn't maintain that aura of being this edgy analog if anyone knew that I actually super liked, certain shows, even though really, I didn't to begin with. So it was a little bit easier for me to maintain the performance of being a big tough edgelord because I just, between the misogyny and the self-loathing, I didn't like a lot of that stuff anyways.
Yeah, and same, a lot, and we've talked about this at length, that a lot of the times we didn't like these things because of the context that they are developed in, and we didn't know that back then. But for me, when it came to manga and things, I was very open to a lot of things because I think part of my pride was the whole I have read everything or watched I am so versatile, which I don't think is a bad thing.
No,
I'm pretty omnivorous when it comes to I eat everything almost. I'm an omnivore in the manga world. Like I will, I will read anything. But
Yeah.
but when it comes to other things, I'm like, I'm a lot better now. Like now, I'll be like, oh, this is a guilty pleasure of mine. Ha ha.
Mhm.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But back then, it was very much like, and again, I think this is very much, a performative. It's not a phase mom teenager thing. And
Mhm.
for me, nothing is a phase. I just go into these things and then I become obsessive. And again, that's the neurodivergency probably, but and my obsessive personality. But
Yes.
but it's just like some things are just like you can't, because you're so afraid of being misrepresented or misunderstood, or like losing your brand, God forbid.
Yeah. Because I definitely had that, and I still do have it a little bit, where it's like I definitely don't think I know everything, but the things that I do know, you will never win.
Mm-hmm. Same.
So like I definitely like I don't think I know everything about when it comes to anime and manga. I'm the first to cop to it, especially the boys' love, because I fully admit, especially in those early years, my lens was very narrow. It was what we had, and it was mostly in the fan work space. So like if I'm sure you've noticed by the time if you've listened to multiple episodes, I yield a lot of stuff to Carola because that's where she is more expert than I am. And if you want to talk about writing 500 words a day about a problematic fictional man, I'm your guy.
There
But
you
if you're
are.
going to talk about the scholarship, go over there. I can't help you. I
And
can't
like,
help you.
and like likewise, because I also, and we talk about this at length, like you have a lot of blind spots because you just don't engage with a lot of the new things. And
Nope.
while I'm not great at engaging with a lot of new things either, because
You're
you
better
know
at it than I am.
I hoard. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm better at it than you are. I'm
Yeah.
more up to date on a lot of things. But yeah.
I'm over here like just old man yells at tree. I don't like the changes Stampede made to the characterization.
Yeah.
Just me being I am very much the person that will watch a beloved series. I will rewatch the same episode multiple times, or I will just stop a series at a certain point.
Mm.
So, like, for me, Full Metal Alchemist ends at The Bachelor Lieutenant, The Flame Alchemist, and The Mystery of Warehouse 13. Series is over. We're done.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. All right, we're finished. Um, but yeah, like, you can stay in your lane so much. And as we mentioned, like, that performative mask. Like, I feel like, yeah, I had to keep up this mask of, like, oh, I can this bad boy here can handle so much non-con. That's the lane I stayed in, but it's also the place that I felt like I had to be, again, considering the titles we got. That if I
Yeah.
couldn't stomach this, if I couldn't handle this, if I couldn't digest it, I couldn't be in this space.
Mm.
So that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
That was a lot, wasn't it?
it's yeah. The worst part is we could keep going, but it's like,
But I think I want to save some stuff for the live.
yeah, absolutely. I have
Like,
some notes based on the Nakamura Asumiko episode that I will share in the live.
yes. I especially want to bring up the Schadenfreude in the live because I feel like that's
Yeah.
something that we can both probably talk about a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, nervous laughter. But for now, we'll wrap up with the early 2000s and late 90s fandom experience was a tango of limbs. It was a desire to be on top of a mountain that was built brick by brick of angst, mutilation, horror, and shock.
Hmm.
We were all rushing to climb that mountain because that's what society expected of us. That's what was in vogue. That was the zeitgeist. That was how we thought.
Yeah.
And it bled into a lot of people's early BL experiences and really changed the way BL fandom existed on the internet. Carola and I talk about this a lot, but sometimes I wonder why so many of us are still fans. with the experiences that we had of just passing back and forth the most abhorrent things on the internet to each other.
You know, it's so funny because when you say that, the answer is so clear in my head, but at the same time, it makes absolutely no sense. Because the answer is, I'm sorry, but I just really, really love boys kissing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But then it's like, but then everything is abhorrent. But there is still some sort of this small spark
the boys
of
still
hope.
kissed.
Yeah, and the boys still kissed, and they're pretty.
Yeah.
And I will forgive a lot.
Same.
To see the boys kiss.
Same. There's a reason why one of my OTPs is literally floating above me.
Yes. I also have some of those, but they're out of frame.
Yeah, no, I'm framed by OTPs essentially. Except for this one. Wait. This one. I do not ship Envy and Mustang together. That sounds volatile in a way that I think is unattractive.
As opposed to volatile in the way that is actually very attractive.
I'll ship Ed and Envy all day. Let's go. Let that hateful palm tree fuck. But
yeah. Again, the only reason I watched Full Metal Alchemist, Envy. I wanted to see Envy.
I will admit, though, now I'm more on the I want Greed and Envy to fuck.
Mm.
This is the part of the show where we thank our patrons.
Truly, thank you for hanging out with us, and what is the word? Sticking it out with us?
Yeah. You survived.
We still have a Patreon episode coming up.
We do, where we're going to talk about fandom horror stories.
Oh my god.
Aren't you excited?
Yeah.
So if you want to get in on the fun, get behind the scenes looks, and support the show.
And decide what we wear for Halloween.
That poll ends today.
Ooh, exciting.
I'm terrified.
Time to go shopping.
I've been fully in denial about this poll.
I haven't looked at it at all since you posted it. So I
horrified.
have no idea.
Yeah, I am terrified.
I know what I'm hoping for.
And I'm afraid that's going to get it. But this is the part of the show where we thank our patrons.
Thank you.
So thank you to Kenny, Dobie80, Steven, Koval, Sue, Lucy H, Amora Blue, Nabila, Rin, Wesley, Jamie, Lauren, and Jay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for supporting the show.
It means a lot.
It genuinely means so fucking much to us. That
and Amanda can get a new lamp.
I can get a new. I've had this lamp for 10 years. It's a 10-year-old lamp. It needs to be taken out back and shot.
Oh God.
Please help. I require a new lamp. Father, help. So thank you so much to our patrons. If you'd like to join them, you can do so at patreon.com/Yaoi Shelf. Carola, would you like to talk about how important engagement is?
It's very important because, once again, we are heavily demonetized for reasons I cannot fathom. And also,
no idea.
Algorithms are the spawn of Satan. And it's just really hard to get out there. So you engaging with the content by commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, sharing with your friends. Take a leaf out of our old books and
just slide to your friends, no context. Just send them a link. Listen to these fucking nerds for 2 hours.
Lock them in your car and go for a ride.
Hold them hostage in your vehicle on a long road trip.
Maybe not start with this episode, because then they might get the wrong idea about who we are.
Unfortunately, it's still a pretty accurate picture. Unfortunately, the picture is still fairly accurate.
Yes, but we are more considerate of other people's experiences and feelings now, and I want to make that very clear.
Yes.
I am not the same terrible person I was at 14.
I'm not, but in some ways I'm worse.
Yes, but in some ways, I didn't know you had 14, so I'm just saying, I'm just agreeing with everything you say. But yeah, it's
In some
people.
ways, I am worse.
There has been some character development, and not always
There
for the
has.
better, but
Yeah.
some of it is better.
My back hurts much more than it did when I was
Oh
14.
my god.
That
Oh
was
my god.
that was 20 years ago.
Don't do this to me.
I was 14 20 years ago.
I hate it here. That is fucking wild.
Dies.
This is we literally just talked about how we don't dump horrible things on our friends anymore, and then you're just over here like just
the looming specter of death. Like, hello.
oh my god. I
The
hate it.
2000s were 24 years ago.
It's been 20 years. I have Amanda.
Yes.
I've
What did I
literally
do?
I've literally been crying about Sasunaru for 20 years.
Yep. Speaking of Sasunaru, would you like to talk about what we're doing next month?
What are we doing next month?
I just put it in. We're going to talk about our collective bad taste in fictional men.
Oh yeah. Excuse me. How dare you draw the parallels between some of the horrible fictional men that I worship and Sasunaru? There's Sasuke is a little on the unstable side, I'll give him that. But Naruto is perfect. But yes, you're correct. I completely forgot that that's what we're doing next month, and
Yeah,
I think that's going to be somehow a much more lighthearted episode, even though these men, some of these
this one's
men,
going to be spicy.
I love it.
I'm so excited. You know, we highlighted in the episode that just because a lot of this angst in the early fandom was performative, it doesn't mean that we don't like darker themes.
I love dark themes.
Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about like villain fuckery in a more refined way. Because yes.
Villain fuckery, but make it refined.
I mean, that's basically what this conversation is.
Yeah, but I know.
One thing that the villain fucker episode uncovered is, I don't want to say that this is a universal feeling, but it's much more common than I think any of us give it credit for. Because at least I knew in my early villain fucking, I felt very special. No one else saw the villain like I did. No one else looked at Million Knives and was like, I want to climb that weird man like a tree.
I mean, I can relate to some of that, yes. And
now you guys have the Shonen version, who's a phallic plant god. Of course everyone wants to fuck him now.
There's a video that YouTube keeps trying to push on me that is like the title card says something like, stop making villain thirst traps or something. And I'm like, no! What? Dude!
Don't tell me what to do.
Like, what? Why are you coming at me like this?
Yeah. Though I will say, stop making serial killer thirst traps.
Yes, but again, serial killers
Yes.
are not fictional characters.
Yeah. That's why
fictional serial killers.
Yes. That's why we're only talking about the fictional men, because we're going to have to once again talk about fiction and reality being separate.
Oh, my favorite subject. I really thought you were gonna
No.
give me a little hint.
No.
No. But I know you're thinking about it.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much if you made it this far. Like, wow.
Yeah, if you made it this far, go get a snack, drink some water.
I'm gonna get some snacks.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I ordered donuts this morning, and one of them is pumpkin spice.
I wish you could order donuts for me.
I would order donuts for you.
I want one of those giant ones. I'm very hungry.
The one that's measured by using a bucket.
Yes, it would take me like a month to eat it. But
You know, the fork and knife, just like every couple of days, you take a bite and then you return it to the fridge.
it will last me throughout my entire novel writing experience. I just need one donut.
See, that's the ultimate nano setup. Is you get one bucket-sized donut, and then you fill your
Ugh.
little mini fridge with Red Bull,
Yeah.
and you just don't leave. You're set.
Yes. Sounds brilliant, doesn't it?
I will say though, there is this one place that makes a breakfast sandwich with their donuts that are not glazed, and it was one of the best things I've ever eaten.
Like sandwich donuts.
Yeah.
Huh.
You've never oh yeah, like you've never had a Luther Vandross.
No.
It's we'll talk about a Luther Vandross after we cut.
Okay.
But thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to our costumed live.
I'm excited to see what it will be.
And we will see you guys in the next one. Bye!
Bye.